Okay, so get ready, everybody, because today we are diving deep, like really deep, into a listener-submitted story that, let me tell you, really got the internet buzzing.
Oh, this one was a doozy, wasn't it? Definitely sparked some strong opinions.
For sure. We're talking honeymoons, surprise guests, and a whole lot of online drama.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly a seemingly innocent honeymoon story turned into, well, kind of a cautionary tale.
Right. You shared this story with us, so thank you for that, by the way, about a newlywed couple and their honeymoon plans. So far, pretty standard, right?
So far, so good, right? Honeymoon phase, exciting times.
Exactly. But here's where things take a turn. The husband, and I can't believe I'm saying this, invited his best friend, Andy, the friend's wife, to come along on the honeymoon.
Now, that's a bold move.
Bold is an understatement.
That's a bold
And the
move.
kicker, the wife had specifically said she wanted it to be just the two of them.
Oh, ouch. Yeah, that's not just a little miscommunication. That's ignoring a pretty big boundary.
Major boundary alert. And the internet, let me tell you, did not hold back.
No, they did not. The court of public opinion was definitely in session.
Oh, 100%. People were outraged. Like, I was seeing comments about annulment, divorce. I mean, whoa.
It's interesting, right? Because it's like, on the surface, it's just a honeymoon, right? But it clearly struck a nerve.
Right. It's not really about the honeymoon, is it? It's about feeling prioritized by your partner, feeling respected. And that boring comment, I still can't get over
Oh,
those.
yeah. The infamous boring comment. That one really got people fired up. For those who missed it, the husband actually said that a honeymoon alone with his wife would be boring.
Like, can you imagine? You're the new wife. You're so excited to spend this special time with your partner. And he basically says, nah, that sounds dull. Need to liven things up with some friends.
Ouch. Yeah, that's got to sting. And I think that's why you saw such a strong reaction online. Because honeymoon or not, that sentiment taps into something much deeper. It's about feeling chosen, cherished, like your partner actually enjoys spending time with you. And when that's called into question, even indirectly, it can be really hurtful.
Absolutely. And that's something we see reflected in a lot of the comments. People were saying things like, if he thinks you're boring now, just wait. Or if my partner ever, and then, insert dramatic reaction.
It's like this situation, even if it's exaggerated for the internet,
Yeah.
becomes this blank canvas for people to project their own relationship fears and anxieties onto.
It's true. And it's not just about feeling bored. It's about feeling replaced almost.
Absolutely. Because the honeymoon is supposed to be this sacred time for the two of you to connect, to celebrate your commitment. It's about solidifying that us against the world mentality that a lot of couples crave, especially early in a marriage.
Yes, like you're building your own little world together.
Exactly. And then to have someone else, or in this case, two other someones, intrude on that space, it can feel like a violation of something sacred.
I mean, I gotta say, some of the comments were pretty out there. I mean, people were speculating about all sorts of things.
Oh yeah, the internet loves a good conspiracy theory, doesn't it?
Seriously, like there were some comments suggesting that maybe the husband was gay and the new wife was unknowingly his beard.
The classic beard theory
Yeah.
always seems to pop up in these situations.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going on here, and honestly, it's not our place to speculate about someone's sexuality.
Absolutely not. But it's interesting how quickly those kinds of theories emerge, right?
Why?
I think it speaks to how desperately we as humans try to make sense of things, especially when we only have a limited amount of information.
That's a good point. We love a good mystery, but sometimes I think we get so caught up in trying to solve the puzzle that we forget to acknowledge the very real feelings and complexities at play.
Right. And in this situation, whether the husband is secretly gay or not, the real issue at hand is the lack of respect and consideration for his wife's feelings.
Exactly. And then to try and smooth things over by offering a private vacation later, it's like, come on.
Oh, the private vacation peace offering. That's a tricky one.
Right. It's like, oh, I messed up royally by disregarding your wishes on our honeymoon, but hey, here's a consolation prize. Doesn't exactly scream, I value our relationship, does it?
No, not really. And it also kind of dodges the real issue, doesn't it? Which is that he didn't seem to care about her desire for a solo honeymoon in the first place. So it makes you wonder, if he's not willing to prioritize her feelings on their honeymoon, when will he?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something a lot of the commenters picked up on as well. It's like, this honeymoon situation, it's not just about a vacation gone wrong. It's a bit of a glimpse into the power dynamics of their relationship.
Right, exactly. It raises those questions about who gets to make decisions, whose feelings are prioritized, and whether there's a pattern of one person's needs consistently overshadowing the others.
And when you start to see those patterns early on, it's definitely a red flag. But, not all the comments were about those deeper relationship dynamics. Some people were just straight up skeptical about the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, there's always that contingent, right? The Pixar didn't happen crowd.
Exactly. And in this case, there were some comments pointing out potential inconsistencies in the original post. Like, apparently, the poster had previously mentioned living with a roommate, but then this whole story unfolded about being newly married.
Ah, the internet detectives. Always on the case. You gotta love it.
Right. So it's entirely possible that this whole honeymoon saga is a fabrication, a creative writing exercise gone viral.
It wouldn't be the first time. The internet, as we know, is a breeding ground for both heartwarming stories and elaborate hoaxes.
Truth. But you know what? Even if this specific honeymoon story turns out to be completely made up, it doesn't make the conversations it sparked any less relevant.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, we're all grappling with these questions about healthy relationships, about communication, boundaries, and feeling valued by our partners.
Mm.
And those are themes that resonate, whether the initial story is true or not.
So true. Okay, so let's say, just for the sake of discussion, that this honeymoon debacle is real. What are the red flags here beyond just this one trip that suggest this relationship might be in trouble?
Ooh, good question. Well, for me, the biggest red flag is the communication breakdown, or lack thereof. I mean, the wife clearly expressed her desire for a solo honeymoon. And the fact that the husband either didn't hear that or chose to ignore it, that's a big deal.
Huge. It's like communication 101. Listen to your partner and respect their boundaries, especially when it comes to something as significant as your honeymoon.
Right. And then on top of that, you have the husband's dismissiveness when the wife tries to address the issue. Instead of acknowledging her hurt and trying to understand her perspective, he minimizes her feelings, telling her it's no big deal. That's a major red flag because it suggests a lack of empathy and an unwillingness to take responsibility for his actions.
And to add insult to injury, he tries to brush it all under the rug with that private vacation offer.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe he means well, but it's not exactly a heartfelt apology or a genuine attempt to repair the damage he's caused.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's that boring comment. Even if he didn't mean it literally, even if he was just trying to be funny or whatever, it reveals a lot about how he views his wife and their relationship.
But like, you're not enough to keep me entertained. Ouch.
Yeah, not exactly a recipe for a happy and fulfilling marriage.
No, not at all. Okay, so we've talked about the communication issues, the dismissiveness, the lack of respect for boundaries. What else? What are some other warning signs that someone might not be the best relationship material?
Well, I think it's important to pay attention to how someone handles conflict in general. Do they get defensive and shut down? Do they try to blame others?
Mm.
Or are they willing to listen, to empathize, and to find a solution that works for both partners?
That's a good point. It's not just about this one honeymoon incident. It's about looking for patterns of behavior. Because if someone consistently struggles with empathy, communication, and accountability, those issues are likely to resurface again and again, no matter what the situation.
Absolutely. And it's not about finding someone who's perfect, because no one is, but it's about finding someone who's willing to work on themselves and on the relationship, because relationships take effort, they take compromise, and they take a willingness to meet your partner halfway, even when it's hard.
So true. So, to our listener who submitted this story, thank you. Whether you're living this honeymoon drama or not, it sparked a really important conversation. And I think it's a good reminder for all of us to be mindful of how we communicate in our relationships, to set healthy boundaries, and to pay attention to those red flags, especially early on.
Absolutely. Because a honeymoon, even if it's not invaded by friends, is just a small blip on the radar of a lifelong relationship. And how you treat each other during those early days, it sets the tone for everything that comes after. It really makes you think, right? Like, here's this supposed to be super special time, this sacred honeymoon phase, and it becomes, well, a battleground, basically.
Totally. And, it kind of makes those divorce annulment comments a little more understandable. You
I
know what I
agree.
mean?
Totally. I mean, obviously those are extreme reactions,
Yeah.
but I get it. It's like this whole situation just pushes those buttons we all have, those fears about being taken for granted in a relationship, especially a new one.
Exactly. Like, it's not really about the honeymoon. It's about feeling like, hey, do you even want to be here with me?
Right, like, am I not enough to hold your attention for a week? And then to have him just brush it off like it's nothing, like she's overreacting.
Total recipe for disaster. I mean, talk about how not to handle conflict. Seriously. Instead of, like, listening to her concerns, validating her feelings, which are totally valid, by the way. He's like, oh, calm down, you're being dramatic.
It's giving very much gaslighting.
A little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many people in the comments were saying this honeymoon incident is probably just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, for sure.
Uh,
Like, if this is how he acts now, imagine 5, 10 years down the line.
Right. It's like this situation, even if it's blown out of proportion for the internet, which, let's be honest, it probably is, it gives us this little window into how they handle conflict as a couple. Or how they don't handle conflict, maybe.
Okay, so real talk. Are there any like early warning signs people can look out for? Red flags that your partner might not be so great at, I don't know, the whole respect communication thing? Because I feel like this situation is giving me major anxiety. Right. Well, and it's normal to feel anxious, right? Relationships are tricky. But to answer your question, yeah, there are definitely some red flags to watch out for. One of the big ones is constantly dismissing your partner's feelings, like we were just talking about.
Okay, so like you're overreacting, you're being too sensitive kind of stuff.
Exactly. And it doesn't always have to be that direct,
Oh.
right? It can be more subtle, like changing the subject when your partner's trying to talk about something important, or minimizing their concerns, making them feel like their feelings aren't valid.
It's all about making the other person feel small, right?
Exactly. And that is never okay. Another big red flag is a lack of accountability.
Okay, so like never apologizing, always blaming other people.
Yeah, or even just like refusing to acknowledge when they've messed up. Because in any relationship, you're going to make mistakes, right?
Right.
We all do. But it's about being able to own up to those mistakes, to apologize sincerely, and to, actually try to do better next time.
So in this honeymoon situation, even though eventually the husband offers the wife that private vacation, the fact that he didn't immediately say, oh my God, I messed up, I'm so sorry, that's a red flag in itself.
Big time. It's like
Yeah.
the first reaction should be concern for your partner's feelings, right?
Yeah.
Not, how can I get myself out of this mess?
Totally. And that kind of ties into another point I wanted to bring up, this whole setting boundaries thing, because it sounds like in this honeymoon scenario, a major boundary was crossed.
Oh, 100%. And, setting boundaries is huge, in any relationship, but especially romantic ones.
Okay, so for those of us who maybe struggle with that, what's the best way to set a boundary? Like, how do you actually do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, it takes practice. It can feel really awkward or uncomfortable at first, especially if you're not used to advocating for your own needs.
Yeah.
But the more you do it, the easier it gets.
So what, like, hey, I need you to not invite other people on our honeymoon?
Exactly. Clear, direct communication. And it's not about being demanding or controlling. It's about saying, hey, this is important to me, and I need you to respect that.
It's about being true to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like not compromising your needs just to please someone else.
Yes. And it's about recognizing that your needs and feelings are just as valid as your partner's.
Okay, so in this honeymoon situation, it seems like that communication, well, it didn't happen or wasn't heard.
It really highlights how important clear communication is in a relationship, right? Because even if you think you're being clear, there's always a chance your partner's hearing something totally different.
It's like that game we used to play as kids, telephone. By the time the message gets to the end of the line, it's completely different.
Right. And I think that's part of what makes this whole honeymoon story so fascinating. It's like this one couple's drama has become this public forum for dissecting all these anxieties we have about relationships, about communication, about expectations.
It's true. And it's kind of wild how this one story, this one couple's honeymoon gone wrong, has resonated with so many people.
It is pretty amazing. And I think it speaks to the fact that even in today's world, even with all the changing dynamics of relationships, there are still certain traditions, like the honeymoon, that hold a lot of weight.
Speaking of traditions, I'm kind of curious to dig into that a little bit. Like, why is the honeymoon such a big deal? It's just a vacation, right? I mean, I love vacations as much as the next person, but...
I know, right? It seems kind of arbitrary when you think about it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a reason why the honeymoon has endured as this, sacred ritual. It's not just a vacation. It's this culturally significant event steeped in tradition and symbolism.
Whoa, okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me.
So for centuries, the honeymoon has represented this liminal space, this transition period between single life and married life.
Ooh, I like that. Liminal space. Sounds very mystical.
Right. It's like crossing a threshold together,
Yeah.
marking the beginning of this new chapter. And historically, honeymoons have served all sorts of purposes depending on the culture.
Oh, like what?
Well, in some cultures, it was a time for the couple to actually get to know each other because, arranged marriages and all that.
Oh, right. Makes sense.
And in other cultures, it was more practical, like a chance for the couple to travel to their new home after the wedding.
So interesting. So even though, like, the context has shifted over time, the underlying significance of the honeymoon, this idea of it being this special transitional time, that's remained pretty consistent.
Exactly. And with all that historical and cultural weight comes a whole lot of pressure. Like honeymoons are supposed to be this perfect blend of romance, adventure, and like blissful togetherness.
Which, let's be real, is a lot to live up to. No wonder people get so stressed about planning the perfect honeymoon.
Totally.
Hmm.
And when those expectations don't match up with reality, whether it's because of a partner's actions or just like, the normal stresses of travel and being in close quarters with someone 24/7, it can feel like this huge letdown.
And then you add in a honeymoon hijacking, and suddenly you've got a recipe for disaster.
It's like throwing gasoline on an already smoldering fire.
And that, I think, explains the visceral reaction a lot of people had to this story. It's not just about a vacation gone wrong. It's about the fear of those fairy tale expectations being shattered. Like, if the honeymoon is supposed to be the most magical time of your marriage, and it's already this messy, what does that say about the future?
It's like a microcosm, right? Like all those anxieties we have about love, commitment, whether we've chosen the right person, they all bubble up to the surface. It's almost like you go on your honeymoon, and it's not just, are we going to have a good time? Is the hotel going to be nice? It's like, is this marriage going to work? Is this it?
Whoa, yeah. No pressure or anything. But you're right. It's like all those big questions, those underlying anxieties, they become magnified on the honeymoon.
Exactly. And I think for this couple, whether this honeymoon story is real or not, it's kind of like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Because those anxieties, they don't magically disappear when you get back from vacation.
Right. Oh, absolutely not. They come back with you, maybe with a tan, maybe not, but they're definitely along for the ride.
Right. And it's like how you deal with those anxieties,
Mm.
how you communicate with each other, how you handle disagreements, that's what really matters in the long run.
So true. So to our listener who sent this in, thank you. It's been like the ultimate case study. And honestly, it's a good reminder for all of us, whether we're single, dating, married, whatever, to think about our own relationship expectations and, what we're willing to tolerate.
100%.
Yeah.
Because a healthy, fulfilling relationship, it shouldn't feel like a constant battle,
Right.
especially not on your honeymoon.
Preach. So for anyone listening who might be, relating a little too hard to this honeymoon hijack, what advice would you give them? Like, how can you tell if you need to, I don't know, have a serious conversation with your partner or like run for the hills?
Okay, so first of all, if you're feeling unsafe in any way, physically or emotionally, that's a huge red flag, and it's important to reach out for help.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's more like, hey, something feels off in my relationship, but I'm not sure what it is, that's totally valid too. And honestly, just having that awareness is the first step.
Okay, so pay attention to those gut feelings. Got it.
Yes, trust your instincts. And then think about like how you're feeling in the relationship. Do you feel heard, respected, valued for who you are? Or are you constantly second-guessing yourself, walking on eggshells?
Ooh, those are good ones. I'm going to write those down.
And, it's okay to ask for what you need in a relationship. It's okay to set boundaries. And if your partner isn't willing to meet you halfway, well, then that might be a sign that it's time to reconsider things.
It's all about knowing your worth.
100%. You deserve to be with someone who celebrates you, not someone who makes you feel like you're not enough.
Facts. And, it's important to remember relationships take work, right? But it shouldn't feel like this constant uphill battle.
Right. And if it does, it might be time to reevaluate if you're both on the same page or if it's time to seek some outside guidance, like couples therapy.
Such good advice. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
I agree. I feel like we've gone from honeymoon hijacks to relationship red flags to like full-on therapy session.
Right. It's been a journey. But as always, it's been amazing chatting with you. Thanks for sharing your insights.
Anytime. And to our listeners, thanks for coming along for the ride. And remember, you are worthy of love, respect, and a honeymoon that doesn't involve any surprise guests.
Mic drop. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. We'll be back next week with another juicy deep dive. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay true to yourselves.